This interview is being conducted for St John Scotland, 75 Years of Making a Difference. My name is Dr Sue Morrison and the respondent is Douglas Dow. This is March 2022 and the interview is taking place in, is this actually Kilcreggan?
This is Kilcreggan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed for the project, Douglas. It's
You're
much
welcome.
appreciated. For the record, would you please confirm your name?
My full name is Douglas Charles James Dow.
Very posh. Could you tell me your age or just your year of birth?
My age is 78.
Thank you very much. Where were you brought up, Douglas?
In various places. I was born in Johnston, Renfrewshire. That's a smallish town beside Paisley in 1943. And when I was 6, we moved to what is now a suburb of London, the London borough of Brent, believe it or not, but in those days was part of Middlesex, a place called Alperton, close to Wembley, and I was there for 3 or 4 years. And then we came back up to Paisley, and that was where my formative years, if I can use those, were. So I went to the local primary school in Paisley about 2 years before the old qualifying exam, the 11 plus came out. And then having passed that, I went to Paisley Grammar School, which was a very good school, in my opinion. And I was there from secondary 1 to secondary 6. And having left there, I went to Glasgow University in 61. And I graduated with a law degree in 64. And then I had a 3-year apprenticeship with a large Glasgow firm now called McRoberts. In those days it was McRoberts, Son and Hutchison. And having left them, I became an employed solicitor, what they call in the trade a qualified assistant, where I worked in Dumbarton for a lawyer called David McIntosh. And in 1969, I moved to Stirling and Gilmore, which became my firm, as it were, for the rest of my career. I joined as a partner on the 1st of June 1969, and I was there as a partner until I retired as a partner when I was 65, 2008, and I continued on for about 2 years on a 4-day-a-week, 3-day-a-week, 2-day to tidy up loose ends. And so by 2010 I had left, and I've been retired since then. I no longer have a practicing certificate. As an aside, when I was 23, an opportunity came up when I was still actually a law apprentice to become the part-time, as it was a part-time appointment at that time, town clerk of the borough of Cove and Kilcreggan. So I was, arguably, there was another chap in my class at school called Reynold Galbraith, and he was the town clerk of Inverkeithing, and I was the town clerk of Cove and Kilcreggan. There was an argument about who was the younger of the two town clerks in Scotland. But that was that, and I was the town clerk here until 1975, which was local government reorganisation, when all these former police boroughs, as this one was from 1865, were abolished and replaced by larger areas. So that was that.
Douglas, could you tell me how you became involved with St John Scotland?
I became involved with St John Scotland through my law firm. One of my senior partners was a chap called Bill Gilmer, who ran our office in Clydebank, and he was an officer in the Order of St John. And I remember him telling me about it, and they always knew that I was interested in history and so forth, and that this would appeal to me. And he, strictly speaking, wrongly in his description, said that the Order of St John, i.e. the Venerable Order, which is our British order, was the oldest order of chivalry in Europe, 900. You went back 900 years. He was confusing it with the Roman Catholic order, the Order of Malta, although there are very tight connections. But I thought this was terrific, so he said, you should become involved. And I met up with a chap called Bob Moyes, now deceased, who was a retired, I think reasonably senior policeman. And he was very active in Helensburgh, promoting St John fundraising activities. And I went along and helped him and did various bits with stalls and all the rest of it. And eventually, because of that, I was admitted, had the honour of being admitted as a serving brother in 1985. So a few years before 85, I was doing things as a volunteer for the association. And in 85, I was a member of the association committee, if you like. And not long after that, the chairman of the association committee asked me if I would be the secretary of it. And I said yes, and I was the secretary for some years. Now, the chairman, the then chairman that I've mentioned, he, for whatever reason, resigned. And he took with him one or two people. And suddenly there was this gap, and suddenly I was promoted from having been the humble secretary. I was becoming perhaps a less humble chairman of the Dunbartonshire Association Committee. And of course, I was then running all the fundraising and so forth that we were doing, and with the help of various people, and that's what I did. And after a few years, I was invited to become a representative officer. I was an officer by that stage, I'd been promoted, at Chapter. And Chapter, as I can show you with one of these photographs, was a very large, because people who were not only specific positions, but people who were representative officers, representative commanders and so forth. So it was over 20 people at meetings. And that became my connection. That was my connection to Edinburgh. And I had that ever since until I retired as Chancellor. Because I was representative officer, I became banner bearer for Chapter. I then was appointed Director of Ceremonies. And then I was invited by Sir Malcolm to become the Chancellor, which was a complete surprise to me. I thought it was a great honour, and I enjoyed doing what I did when I was as Chancellor. I certainly enjoyed that. And I was Chancellor for not just 2 terms of 3 years, but 2 terms of 3 years plus an extra bit, because I think we decided that it would make more sense if I were handing over at the St John Day, which was 2 or 3 months further on, which is what I did to Joe Morrow. So that was that.
Could you tell me some of the activities you were involved with in those early days?
Well, in the early days, it was easier in the early days, we're talking 20 years ago, to get people involved. I don't know why, but the active middle-aged people no longer seem to be happy to give of their time for charity work and so on and so forth. It may be to do with IT, that everybody expects an instant response, and you don't have time now. I mean, 20 years ago, perhaps you could write a letter to someone, and 2 or 3 days before you get a response, people want it instantly. But in those days, we could run a race night in Helensburgh and have 300-400 people at it, and with raffles and things, and raise quite a lot of money that way. we also had the usual can collections, and one of the committee members, the order committee members' wives was, or wife had a connection with the fashion industry, and she ran fashion shows, and they made a lot of money. We ran fashion shows in Helensburgh too, in my time when I was chairman of the Association for Dumbartonshire. A very nice lady, Pamela Lyons, and sadly deceased. She ran them, and we made a lot of money, and it was a very popular evening. And we've done various things. We've had bridge nights, and we had a garden party in the grounds of a large house in Helensburgh, which was a very well supported thing in the summer. And it was one of these houses with the grounds that went down to the sea. So there was a lot of people there, and we were able to do stalls and spinning wheels and all the usual stuff. So yeah, did all that.
Do you remember who was on the association at that time?
Who was on the association at that time? Yes, George Squadron Leader George Campbell, myself, Tom Downs from Bearsden, John Brown, Helensburgh, who else? Stan Latimer from Helensburgh, George Gray from Helensburgh. We always had problems with Bearsden because we tended to get one person, and if you got them, you got their wife or their brother or their son who was by that stage middle-aged himself, etc., etc. But if you lost one, if you lost the father figure, they all went, doom. So we're always trying to build up groupings so that they weren't too dependent on one particular family group. But, yeah.
Were there many women?
Yes, we had people like Mrs. Liston, who was a very early supporter because she also supported Glasgow. She had a background from Glasgow. And is a very generous financial supporter of the order too. Yes, we had two or three. The majority were men. We've got more ladies now, I think, but still it's mainly men. But there are more ladies than there were in those days, no question of that. Ladies tended to be great bakers and things who come through with the teas and stuff, but they were members of the committee.
Do you remember when the Order of St John became more commonly known as St John Scotland?
Yes, that would be about 2000. In fact, I've got a little note, if I may just look at this. That was associated with the governance review, this great big report that we've got here with 120 recommendations. So that, just trying to get a date, because the governance report went on for quite a long time. Be about 20 teens. I could spend time digging through and I could give you exactly, but St John's Scotland is very much associated with the incorporation of St John. As you know, we are now a corporate body, a company limited by guarantee of its members with limited liability, which was frankly the way to go, to be modern and approved by London. They were quite keen that we did that. As you've no doubt been told, we employed a chap called Dr. Tom Mitchell, who did the report, which is here. CGPM Consulting with its 120 recommendations. And like all things, we need a shorthand now, so we basically call ourselves St John Scotland as our trading business name, although we've got a more formal name, because we still have the duality of the business bit we do, which is all money and owning property and dividends and paying people and staff and so forth. And we have the chivalric bit, which is really separate. That's between Her Majesty the Queen and all the members across the world, really. And that sets, your ranks and your oblations and all that kind of thing, and conduct issues and things like that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
When did the associations and the committees become one?
2006.
So at that point, what happened to you?
I became the deputy chairman to Donald Fullerton of the St John Order Committee for Dunbartonshire. I was already on that. I mean, it got a bit silly because there were people on both committees doing the same stuff, because Donald used to say, now we'll hear the meat in the programme, and this was my report as chairman of the association committee to the order committee, who had done nothing, and they were there to just say, well, that's fine, that's good, give us the money, and that was it. So it made a lot more sense. It's a lot more efficient now than it was, no question of that.
So when you were a member just of the association,
Yeah.
You didn't have a say in how the monies were spent at that point?
We had a say in the sense that we made proposals to the Order Committee saying we would like to raise money for the Aracher Mountain Rescue Team, because we raised money for mountain rescue at Aracher long before the Order nationally supported mountain rescue. That's another avenue to be explored. But we would have to make a proposal to the Order Committee, who would normally sanction it, and if they had any reservations, they went up to HQ. And then if we needed any money, we would have to indent to them, the Order Committee, to see if they could release money that they had, perhaps from money that we raised before, to spend some money on setting up costs for whatever project we were doing, which would be fundraising. And then when we raised the money, we didn't keep the money, we gave it to them, and it went up to the Order, because it was all Order money. And then we had to ask if we could get it back to hand it over to the mountain rescue. So it was a kind of cumbersome bureaucratic process, which I don't think we needed to do in terms of checks and balances and so forth. I think what we've got now is infinitely superior.
So, what kind of projects or expenses did the committee approve over the time that you've been there?
Well, the first one was Aracher Mountain Rescue. Then we took on several others, one of which was support for the Loch Lomond inshore rescue boat called St John, which is based at Luss at the moment, which is very active, and you'll have seen photos of it and so forth. And then we also continue to support the St Margaret of Scotland Hospice in Clydebank, which is run by a Roman Catholic order of nuns. I can't remember the precise name of them. Sister Rita is the lady who's in charge there. Wonderful person. And it's open to all. It's not just a Roman Catholic. I mean, anybody can go to it, whether they've got religion or no religion or different religions. And it's a very lovely environment for palliative care, you know, last months on earth, if you like, of people. So it's very nice. And it relies wholly on funds which are raised privately. So it's a good one. Again, it's within the remit of the pro utilitate hominum for the health and well-being of mankind. So we've got mountain rescue with the rescue boat, we've got the hospice, and the fourth one is the at the Vale of Leven Hospital in Alexandria. There is a special unit called the Acorn unit, which is a unit which is devoted to the treatment of children, normally young children, with multiple disabilities. And the objective is to facilitate the treatment in such a way that they can go and get several or all of these disabilities treated at the same time. They don't have to go to this hospital for this and that hospital for that. They can do it all at one time. And again, although it's an NHS thing, they're always needing a little bit of help, and some of the specialists they have, we've funded them going on courses for their speciality, which, because of the extra expense, the NHS would have liked to have put them through but couldn't because of the money. We can do that. We also raise money, and have for many years, through what we call the 100 Club. People, you pay £12 a year and you get a number. And if you pay 24, you get two numbers. And basically, we have 4 draws a year for £10, £10 and £50. So that's £70 4 times a year. And basically, that's the reward that the people get if they're lucky enough to win. And we get enough to make a reasonable contribution for a small area like ours towards the hospital in Jerusalem, which is, again, what we like to do.
Do you think that St John Scotland is widely known in this area?
Not as widely known as I would like. People keep saying, is that the Knights Templar? We have that. I think we might get more widely known as we get into patient transport. We are fortunate in our committee that we were left, a client of mine, left quite a significant sum of money to be used by the order in Dunbartonshire. And that will hopefully give us funds to help us with perhaps branded vehicles and things to do patient transport. We're investigating at the moment, our chairman Graham Smith is investigating with the medics and authorities and so forth to see how best we can put this into practice in conjunction with advice being given and sought from other areas in the order, because they've been doing it for longer than us and can help us considerably. So that's one way, I think. And if the people have a tabard or something, we have got tabards when we raise money, but St John Ambulance people seem to understand, but we don't run ambulances. But I always say when we're rattling cans to people, well, we are part of the same group that does St John Ambulance, but we don't do ambulances itself. We do health-related things like the rescue, you know, rescue and health, if you like. So that's what we do.
Thank you. You mentioned patient transport. How did that come about? How did you decide to start doing that in this area?
Well, basically, it's come down from the centre. Edinburgh's keen, I think, that we become, and I have been keen for quite a long time, that the order becomes more an organisation which does things directly for the public rather than just raising money and giving it to other charities. I mean, the most wonderful example of a good charity that is unique is the RNLI. Nobody else does that and competes. But almost everything you think of now, you'll look round the corner, you'll be at least one other charity that's doing it. So it's no good in trying to steal another charity's course of action and objectives and so forth. But patient transport's a good one because it doesn't necessarily involve specific medical responsibilities like first responder does. It's slower than that perhaps. And it's also needed all the time because as I understand it, the NHS, the ambulance service, is happy to rush you to hospital to get treated. But they don't want to use an ambulance to bring you home once you're better. They want somebody else to do that. And that's the kind of thing. And repeat, oncology and so forth, people who need regular treatments and so forth. And we don't necessarily need people who are members of the order to do this work. What we need to be is facilitators to enable them. And that's what stage we're at in Dumbarton Shire, is trying to get enough people together that we can say we can now put forward a local entity that is doing this and is adequately staffed and organised and so on and so forth. That's the objective. We will continue to raise some money and things as well, because that's what the people like. People respond. If you're rattling a can in Helensburgh and you say it's for the Acorn Centre, they'll say, oh well, my brother's son was in there and that, so here's a £5, it's good. Whereas if you say it's for something in Malawi or something, they say, oh, not so keen on that. So that's just the way of the world, I suppose.
Do you think it's always been like that?
Oh, I think charity begins at home. You can always get support. We support, Araka, the Loch Lomond Rescue Boat, the hospice in Clydebank, and the Children's Centre. So I think it's always been a significant element of that. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying we will get people who will support doing things for the eye hospital and so forth, but it's easier to do it through the medium of 100 Club than to go to people direct and say, give us this for helping blind people in Israel or Palestine, I think.
Just going back to the patient transport for a moment. What are the main hospitals where you would be transporting patients to?
Well, we think initially we would keep it tight, so it would be probably Vale of Leven, maybe the RAH, because the way the public transport is set up for people to come from the Vale of Leven to get to the RAH in Paisley is not an easy journey. If you've got a car, it's all right. Otherwise, you're chopping and changing various transport routes and so forth. So that's why we think it would be that, and maybe the Heart Hospital in Clydebank. We're waiting on guidance on this as where the need. We are finding at the moment that there's difficulty in getting advice from the people that we really think should be able to give us advice. So the administrators saying there is a need for this and that and the next thing, and the units are at A, B and C and and here's the man you should speak to and so forth. We're at that stage trying to clear this out. We've been speaking to the MP and so forth, so she's supportive, she's good. So, we hope to do something there.
So you've got a bit of a wee pot of money that you can use to buy perhaps a vehicle.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate some volunteer drivers using their own?
Possibly, but we think it becomes less attractive. If you're a retired person and you say, I've got time and I've got the inclination to support this because I believe in it and blah, 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 that's fine. But then if you say, and can you use your own car and we'll give you 40 pence a mile, the problem with a retired person then is saying, well, I could run my car into the ground and the 40p's are not going to enable me to buy a new car. It's a difficult ask for people who might be looking at their last car or an older car and so forth. Whereas if you say, and we can produce a vehicle for you, so the only sacrifice is your time. And I think we're fortunate with that. We're very lucky that we're in that position. Although in anything where we've been using any of this money, we haven't used much at the moment, we liaise with HQ. We always try and do as one.
Thank you very much. Is this area considering taking any other of the newer initiatives?
No. Well, we do. Well, wait a minute. We already do defibrillators. We've had the prior hand over the defibrillator to the National Trust for Scotland at Hill House in Helensburgh, the Rennie Mackintosh House. So we are doing that. We are doing defibrillator training. We've been doing it through youth groups and so on, and churches and so forth. So we're developing that training and the supply of where necessary. There are quite a lot of other charitable groups who are doing defibrillators now. It's become a popular thing. So we don't really want to be trying to steal anybody else's thunder. You know, it's just where there are gaps, we will fill the gaps if we can. So we do that, and we're doing patient transport, and we're raising money for these other good charities that we like to support. I don't know if we will get to first responding. That would be another stage up, and I think at the moment, because of the resources we have in terms of people, and we're constantly rebuilding and trying to get new people in, and that's what we're doing at the moment. We've increased our active base, if you like, to some extent. We like to do one thing at a time, and try and do it well, rather than say we'll do this, that, and the next thing, and it all fall apart.
Is there any kind of initiative or fundraising event or anything that you would particularly like me to ask you about?
Well, the only thing that was, I always felt that we should have some kind of, I won't say a uniform, but something that the public would recognise it. So that, I mean, I think we probably do have now throughout Scotland tabards that if you're rattling a can on a Saturday, you've got. It's just, I think the great thing is to have vehicles, white vehicles with the black logo and St John Scotland is really, I think, the best way of getting, or one of the best ways of getting publicity. I mean, I can go along with a sandwich board on a Saturday in Helensburgh saying we're doing this, we're doing that, and talk to people, and that person who has stopped and talked to me in the street will go along and say to somebody else, duh, 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 duh. And then when I see them again, they'll say, what was that you were on about? And I say, but, and that is just the way it is. So putting adverts in the paper and things, we have through Donald Fulton's connection with the press in particular, we get articles in the Helmsman Advertiser, the local newspaper. It's photos of cheques being handed over and so forth. But once you've seen one cheque being handed over, you've really seen them all. And it has to be something different. But so there's not really too much. I think we are getting better known, but our tradition has been to be dignified and quiet and gentlemanly, if you like, genteel, and we have to be sensitive. We are a royal organisation, and we can't have the Queen being too jazzed up, shall we say, but I think we could do with a bit more than we do. And, any ideas should be considered that are appropriate, I think, yeah.
Thank you. How much interaction do you have with the other areas?
Only normally through the quarterly meetings of the areas, the area chair people. We don't at present, and we haven't, in my knowledge, in Dumbartonshire, ever done things jointly with Glasgow or whoever. But that may come with patient transport, because there'll be overlaps, practical situations which will give us overlaps and an opportunity to do that. And I mean, if we can make sense, we would do it. We wouldn't want to trespass on the footprint of Glasgow or anything like that with our stuff, unless there was a special reason for it. But I mean, one of the issues that has been raised from time to time is that Argyllshire, I mean, we're Lomond and Argyll here, but that's a fairly recent local authority division. But the real Argyll is all that way over there, Dunoon and Carroll and so forth. And there's always been talk that Argyll could come in under Dumbartonshire, but the problem is logistics. I mean, you've got Campbellton, it's 100 miles away at the bottom. You've got Oban away up here. You've got, Inverary in the middle, and so on and so forth. Although it's great that we now have the Prior, who is, of course, the Prior, not the Prioress. I am call her Prior because that's what the Constitution says. Now, a lot of ladies who are actors, some of them call themselves actors. They don't want to say actress. So our Prior's happy with Prior. So we might get something that we can do with Argyll, but it's a difficult one. You can't really ask someone from Campbellton to come up to a committee meeting in Helensburgh. It's a long, long way. So there we are.
Yeah, they would probably need an overnight stay.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could do that, but and then we need to build. I mean, there are a few people here and there throughout Argyll who are members of the order who, through other connections, not through Argyll itself, but getting them all together, there's not a great number of them.
So, what would you say are the main challenges for this particular area? Is geography one of them?
Geography's not bad. We are building in more towards Clydebank and so forth at the moment. We've got our chaplain's a minister in Clydebank, and he's a young guy, great guy, enthusiastic and so forth, and he has connections. It's the connections to the connections to the connections that you build the nucleus in an area. And that's what we would like to do. There's always a danger you fall back on the tried and tested, and you don't, you almost get locked into that room, that box, which works. But you're missing other things, so it's a question of trying to be as broad as you can. No, I think we're okay. It's if we can achieve our patient transport and our defibrillators and continue with a bit of fundraising and so forth as well. I think for our size of area, that would be reasonable.
What else do you need in order to be able to do that?
Volunteers.
And how easy or otherwise is it to get new volunteers?
It's in my opinion done by personal connection. I think to put an ad in the paper and say we're looking for volunteers is probably not going to get anything. I mean, we've tried versions of that in the past. You only need one person in an area who has this extra factor X, a charismatic person. And if you get one, they often will draw in other people, and suddenly you'll have a very successful group. And that's what we would like to do. Because I'm conscious of the fact that the leadership in Dumbartonshire are not getting any younger. So basically, we're not as fit and sharp as we were. But we've got more time and so forth, so we do it more gently perhaps. And we have to try and get this younger group of people, and that's been the good thing with our new chairman, that he has some connections. He had a lot of connections with the Boys Brigade movement at a senior level, and he's using these in a successful way to encourage people to support us with defibrillator training and stuff like that. So it's getting round. These things aren't built overnight. I mean, I think 30 years ago, you could have said something in the local paper and you would have got people coming forward, but you will not get that in anything. I'm a member of things like the Rotary, and Rotary is struggling now with membership, because even with taking ladies in, which is I'm in favour of, but even with that, the numbers are not as easy as they were. I mean, when I first joined Rotary, it was an honour. You know, people would come and ask you and whisper if you were to be offered, would you? It's not. I mean, now it's like golf clubs. I mean, you couldn't get into all the better clubs around here. Now they're advertising cheap deals to get in and all the rest of it. It's just a fact of life.
Why do you think it has changed?
I think I think information technology has changed it completely. In my business, people came to see you, you wrote them a letter, the letter would go out so that within 2 or 3 days of them seeing you, they had a letter from you, and if they had to do something, they come back, and that would be a week, and There was more time. People seem to have more time. Whereas now people are, can you come back tonight and stuff like that. And the pressure's on them at every level, in their homes and everything. And so when they come in at night, they don't want to go out and do things. They want to sit down and stare into space and charge the batteries for the next day. I think that's just the way it's modern life. Modern life has a faster pace. I think that's the reality. And particularly younger people are used to getting their wishes met, self-gratification, if you like, much faster than older people who had less expectations of what life might owe them and so forth. As I say to people, in St John and other contacts, if you do nothing, nothing happens. You can't complain. So you have to do something, no matter how little it is, and encourage others to do things and so forth like that. If you don't do anything, nothing happens.
Going off on a different tack, do you recall any particular characters through your time with St John?
Well, Bob Moyes was a charismatic character. he was absolutely terrific. Just trying to think. Well, John Brown, who was the secretary of the Dumbarton, he was the treasurer, in fact, of the Dumbarton St John Committee, was a tremendous character. John was a very successful man and a humble man. He was senior in the British athletics movement. He'd been a good athlete in his day in Scotland, and he ended up running the British Olympics track team. So we were able to get Kelly Holmes tops signed by her and things through John when we were for awards and things like that. So it was super, and he had a great sense of humour, and he was a very practical, clever man. He could devise simple but clever solutions to do things. He was just very good. And it was a great pity when he died, basically. Like, he just took ill. He was getting on in age and so forth. But he was a super guy. A lot of time for John. Trying to think of anybody else who was a particular character. No, I think, we've got plenty of guys I could go on about, but they wouldn't stand out the way. Or Mrs. Liston. Mrs. Liston has been outstanding. She has run a musical evening at a high level at Ross Priory for many years now, the proceeds of which go to the Order of St John. She does all the organisation. Personally, she's in her 90s. I've got a little book, what was it called? Doorstep to Damehood or something it's called, but it's a super little book, and very much Catherine. Yeah, she's very straight, she talks her mind. If you said to Catherine, do you like my new car? Most people will say, oh, it's lovely. But she said, oh, no, I don't like it. I said, why? Oh, I don't like that yellow colour. That's Catherine. That's just what you see is what you get.
Over the years, have you seen changes in the organisation? I'm thinking of from Edinburgh in particular.
Yes. The organisation is a bit slicker now than it was. Which reflects the fact that we tidied the thing up. When I was Chancellor, we got rid of all the redundant properties that we didn't need that were exposing us to risk. We got rid of them, we got money in which we used elsewhere. So we got rid of all that kind of stuff, and we've got people in to do specific roles that we're trying to develop now, like publicity and so on and so forth. So it's different because we've got more people, but some of them are part-time, as it were. I think we're well run from the centre. I think Angus Loudon's got his finger on it, and I think the new prior will have a good support there. So I think we're okay. We don't want to get too many people, but I think we've got enough. I think we're okay.
You mentioned that you looked at the property portfolio and decided that some were unviable moving forward. Could you tell me a wee bit about those, please?
Yes. Basically, over the years, the Order of St John in Scotland was donated properties of all kinds by wealthy people. Now, one of the things that was donated to the Order were bits and pieces of property in the Aberdeen area, in Aberdeen itself. buildings and so forth. And they joined up together to form a private hospital, in effect, which was run under the name of the Order of St. John. And I think there were concerns that people were paying fees for treatment in this private hospital, and these fees were going to St. John. And the issue, I think, from a tax point of view, was whether this was a charity or whether it was not a charity, actually just a trading entity. And so it was decided, this is before my time, it was decided to sell this private hospital in Aberdeen, and they did. And they got millions of pounds. And that really is the core of the funds that we have today that we need. We never ran ambulances, although we've provided an ambulance. One of my things that I was very pleased to be involved with was the presentation of the neonatal ambulance at Glasgow.
When was that?
That would be about 2015, something like that. It cost 140,000, something like that. And this was to treat babies, mainly recently born babies, who couldn't take the risk of being put in a helicopter for the pressures in their heads. So they needed a vehicle that could take them, but would have the equivalent of an operating theatre in the vehicle. And it was done for 2 children at one time. And, for the outlying areas, and take them to hospital in Glasgow. So that was a terrific thing, and there's been, you save lives there, and we must have saved quite a lot of lives, the Order. So that was a great thing. That was done in conjunction between Glasgow Committee, who had money, and the central St. John at HQ level. So that was terrific. Now, with regard to the properties that we had over the years acquired a number of homes, big houses, old Victorian houses, which were used as retirement homes, as it were. And they get harder and harder to operate with all the new regulations and things, so we get rid of those. That was really before my time. However, we were left with odd bits of land. Now, what we got rid of in my time recently, as it were, was we had 2 large plots of ground at Carberry in East Lothian, Carberry Towers, and we sold them for 130,000, something like that. And that made sense, because these were pieces of land with large trees, some of which had fallen or were falling and had been stopped from falling by hitting other trees, and it was full of dog walkers and things, and we couldn't really build on it. So we got rid of those because there was a big risk there. We also had a property which we had built called Andrew Murray House, which was at Strathire, which was a house originally for blind people that was tied in with Erskine Hospital and so forth. And gradually Erskine didn't use it, and eventually we had this house which was costing us a fortune to run, and trying to get bridge groups and things to use it, which was the wrong way around. It was an inversion. Instead of saying we've got this house because we've to fill a need, we were saying we've got this house and we're desperate to find a need for it. So we get rid of that. We also sold a plot of ground there at Strathire, and we had a plot of ground in Glasgow which we sold. So all of that went, and we gifted some plots of ground at Strathire. We gifted them because it became clear that the lady who had gifted a lot of ground at Strathire to us of different kinds, farms and things. We had all manner of things which we'd sold over the years. Wanted these particular bits of ground to be available for use by the locals. So we couldn't really sell them for profit. And the locals had got wind of this, so it was a no-win. So we donated it to them and so forth. And we've got the shop in Edinburgh, which we lease out, and it's a commercial thing. It makes a good rental income for us. Archibald Russell Court, I had a look at when I was Chancellor, and it's obvious that we were given a large piece of ground, and we built on part of it, which is what was Archibald Russell Court. I don't know what it's still called, Archibald Russell Court, is it? They might call St John Palmont or something like that now. But the other bit which wasn't built on is used as a car park for the railway station, but we own it. So that's an issue that's, I think they're now looking at, but I checked through the searches and was convinced that it was something we should be looking at. And we are, so that's good. So we get rid of all these properties. So we only own now the shop in Edinburgh, Palmont, which is the Archibald Russell Court, and St John House in Edinburgh. So these are the cores that we need. So that was sensible. Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that to me.
We also did another thing, which is interesting. I mentioned to you all this money we got when we sold the hospital in Aberdeen. Well, we didn't sit on it. Sir James Stirling, who was the prior at that stage, said, we can't just sit in all this money, we've got to do something with it. And he had interest and connections with hills and mountains and so forth, so we started to support Scottish Mountain Rescue. And we bought and provided mountain rescue stations for a whole series of mountain rescue teams in Scotland. These stations typically had parking, storage, training and all the rest of it. Subsequent to that, we've now given all these to these people because, again, we were paying all the insurance money and things, and yet we were partly responsible for them but didn't have any control over them as staff. And we also have been supporting mountain rescue by giving them specially adapted Land Rovers for use by the teams, and there's a scheme for that. So we've done that. So it's we haven't been sitting on the money doing nothing. It's been used all the time.
And I know Scottish Mountain Rescue are very grateful.
Yeah, good.
Are there any other kind of activities that St John Scotland's been involved with?
Well, local committees do local activities in their area. So in that sense, there are all manner of different things being done throughout Scotland. And, you would have to ask each local area, just as we support a hospice in Clydebank, maybe somebody else doesn't do a hospice else anywhere, etc. So these would be very much local issues.
When you were Chancellor, did you manage to visit the areas?
Not as much as I would like, because I was quite heavily engaged in the incorporation. I did a whole lot of papers for the Chancellor with rationales and things. Sorry, for the class. And that kept my nose fairly close to the grindstone. So I did get out to Perth, to Glasgow, to Inverness, I didn't make it to Aberdeen or Angus and Dundee or the Southwest. I'd like to have done so, but it just so happened that I didn't.
You're still involved with the committee, are you?
Yes, I'm the deputy chairman of Dumbarton's Dumbarton Order Committee.
How have you managed during the last 2 years through the COVID pandemic?
Well, we haven't been doing much. That's the truth of the matter. It's only recently that we've started having physical committees rather than Zoom committees. We haven't been able to raise money, by collections in supermarkets and events and things like that. We haven't been able to do that. So, if anything, we've just turned the gas down under our activities. I'm afraid I think as most places have, we haven't been out and about.
Is there a plan that you have in mind of how to kind of open up again?
Well, we have started in the sense that we have been having meetings, physical meetings, and we are looking at to do things in the next year, because this COVID thing will overhang us for a while, of gradually opening up and doing various things. So we've got sort of discussions afoot for that. Yeah.
It's been pretty bad for most charities.
Yes.
And something that was raised with another organisation that I'm involved with is they also have collection cans. But a lot of people now do not carry money.
This is an issue which we have been confronting recently. We are investigating whether we can do some kind of card system. I don't know the answer to this one. There's a bit of me that's concerned that says it's one thing for people to say, oh, here's £1. That's easy, and you get £1. But they don't want to commit themselves by producing their card. And because I think they're kind of anticipating that they're going to be really expected to pay £5. And B, somehow or other they don't want to make their card too available to people. I don't know is the answer. We will have to find out. Our treasurer is looking into this at the moment with Cash Bank. Yeah.
I know that a lot of other organisations have kind of gone online and doing the GoFundMe type activity.
Uh-huh.
Is that something you've considered, or?
Don't think so. It's something that I think will be in the basket of things we have to discuss. Yeah.
You've been involved with St John's Scotland for a long time, Douglas.
Uh-huh.
Can you tell me about some of your favourite memories?
I think the big garden party, which I mentioned in the house with the garden going down to the sea, it was a lovely day, and there was, everything, and the dog there. So it was terrific. I enjoyed with Sir Malcolm and his wife, my wife and I went to Toronto to the Grand Council meeting there at Sir Malcolm's request, and we enjoyed that. Took part in various things there, which was very good. What else? Obviously, I enjoyed being inducted into the order as a knight. I enjoyed that. That was in London.
What was that?
Was that 2008, 2009, something like that? Let me see. 2012, in fact. Yeah. And I got a medal for, I think, 32 years service as well. I got a long service medal.
this is more or less all my questions. One more actually. Can you tell me what your hopes are for the future of St John?
My hopes are that we're better known and we get more public support, and through the public enough members to properly discharge the objectives that we seek for ourselves. We're kind of on the edges a little bit, and I think that's common with a lot of charities at the moment. This is a special charity though, because we are not just the Rotary, we're the Rotary with the Queen as our head. And it's a different thing. It's an honour because, every member of the Order of St John has a direct relationship between themselves and Her Majesty. I mean, to go back to the basic theory, Her Majesty invites people to become a member of her order. It's an honour which, provided you're sensible and decent, can't be taken away from you. It's an honour. I mean, it's something after your name. So just as I have a law degree, but the first thing after my name is Case and J, because that's higher up. But there you are.
Thank you, Douglas. Is there anything you would like to add?
No, I've been very happy to have had this opportunity to ramble on your behalf, so I hope that the rambling has been interesting and of some value.
It has indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.